Our third panel this afternoon is entitled Soft and Hard, Physics and Communication. The title plays, of course, with hardware and software and the spectrality that we need for the transcriptions in between. But I invited Ivica, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Like it's, you are frozen, and then each.
Okay, you got the instructions. I invited him, he's a colleague of mine here at TU. We have only recently met and had a few encounters where there were a lot of indicators that we share quite a lot of interest. He is an architect. He studied architecture at ETH in Zurich. He completed his PhD in architecture at TU Vienna on sacred architecture. It's a book which has been published this year, actually, quite fresh. In German, Nahe Ferne, sakrale Aspekte im Prisma der Profanbauten. So, the closeness of what is far away, sacred aspects in the prism of profane buildings. His larger interest is in a phenomenology of space, and I'm very curious to hear how you're going to introduce the model from your own angle. Very welcome.
En αρχή εν ο λογός. Και λογός σάρξ γένετο και εσκήνωσεν εν ημίν. In the beginning was the Word. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. The beginning of John's Gospel, the so-called Logos hymn, introduces what I felt and spontaneously, as pleasantly asked from Professor Bühlmann to speak about soft and hard physics of communication. Maybe it's surprising, this starting, but yet I think that is quite close or maybe also complementary to issues you have treated this morning and yesterday. But here I don't want to emphasize logos, which today was often mentioned, nor arche, the word that we architects more or less consciously, mostly unconsciously, care in our title. Instead, I like to focus on sarx, the meat, and then flesh. As said, it may be an unintended background to this panel, but since you started from theologian Erasmus from Rotterdam, you may use to it. I consider it not at all far from posed question generally here. One would put spontaneously difference between hard and soft, as Professor Bühlmann already mentioned, in analogy to the complicated limit borrowed from informatics mostly between hardware and software, where the one implies some kind of physical traces of information and the other blank application of informations. I would like to try to set a presumed limit on a completely adult place, or rather condition, to one between self-awareness or self-consciousness of human being and the presumed limitless of the all. The so-called hard problem of consciousness. Out of where hard and soft becomes or can become of true public, social, political, and even scientific dimension at all. That means that distinction of substantial problem is based on self-referentiality of human. The communication or the reference we today often mention all of the world is either in any way referentiable to self-awareness or it isn't. Indeed, ontological truth happens always then when we are able to embody the knowledge in our human existence, so to say, to illustrate a presumed totality, for instance, through applied science or through poetical sophistication of the same. This illustration on both sides is like a holy icon in some kind of diaphragm between so-called hard and soft. The icon works as a diaphanous surface where the transcendence is translated into evident phenomenon. Out of so constructed background, I want to come to the actual issue of this panel, physics of communication. And state that the physics of communication don't grow on objectified truth, but on the projection of all existing to our self-conscience. With that I mean all cognitive and intuitive capacities of human being as an individual and as a collective also. Physics of communication means very literally to appear, like physein, to appear, and cum munire, to put together. It means that it appears in a way as a somehow intelligible objectivity. When we deal with truth, in that sense, we have two hard facts concerning human conscience. We have biological duration determined from conception to death, and we are made out of the flesh. For that, I want to show small acoustic trace of Terry Bison. They are made out of meat.
They're made out of meat.
Meat?
Meat. They're made out of meat.
Meat.
There's no doubt about it. We picked several from different parts of the planet, took them aboard our recon vessels, probed them all the way through. They're completely meat.
That's impossible. What about the radio signals?
They use radio waves to talk, but the signals don't come from them. The signals come from machines.
So, who made the machines? That's who we want to contact.
They made the machines. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Meat made the machines.
You're asking me to believe in sentient meat.
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. These creatures are the only sentient race in this sector, and they're made out of meat.
Okay, maybe they're like the Orphalai. You know, a carbon-based intelligence that goes through a meat stage.
No, they're born meat and they die meat. We studied them for several of their lifespans, which didn't take too long. We all know the lifespan of meat.
Ugh. Maybe they're like the Weddellite, a meathead with an electron plasma brain inside.
No, we thought of that. They're meat all the way through.
No brain.
Oh, there's a brain. There's a brain, all right. It's just that the brain is made out of meat.
So, what does the thinking?
You're not understanding. The brain does the thinking. The meat.
You're asking me to believe in thinking meat.
Yes, thinking meat. Conscious meat. Loving meat. Dreaming meat. The meat is the whole deal. Are you getting the picture?
So, are you in the picture? That's how Terry Bisson, you are know probably from the Fifth Element, since he wrote a scenario for Fifth Element, but this is one of, I show it in less time because I'm so fascinated of this small dialogue. And that's how our question between hard and soft starts to be at least teleological, if not even theological. But to focus on architecture and generally design processes, the question we need to pose is not how do architecture should integrate copiousness of new embodied technological feature, but rather what can support our self-conscious, individual and collective. And any kind of information is in our perspective, is simply not indifferent and not arbitrary, but due to our selfness becomes biological and intellectual flesh. There is immanent architectural value to that. Curious fact in that sense is that human shelter doesn't grow on his skin, but lets some distance between the body and the shelter itself. The way in which we receive space for reflection, in the literal and metaphorical sense. Space in which our Leib, I don't find a good translation of that word from German, can grow bigger than our body, as Rudolf Schwarz would state. And in the same time, we are flesh of the world, as Merleau-Ponty put it. Flesh is not deficient, but the icon, as I said before, of transcendency. To illustrate that, I would read one poesy in German language, since I was not satisfied with the English translation. I'm going to watch to send to where an English translation in a better way, if I find it. Durch so viele Formen geschritten, durch Ich und Wir und Du, doch alles blieb erlitten, durch die ewige Frage, wozu? Das ist eine Kinderfrage. Dir würde erst spät bewusst, es gibt nur eines, ertrage, ob Sinn, ob Sucht, ob Sage, dein fernbestimmtes Du musst. Ob Rosen, ob Schnee, ob Meer, was alles erblühte, verblich, es gibt nur zwei Dinge, die Leere und das gezeichnete Ich. Die Poesie ist Gottfried Benn. Having said that, I would like to introduce our next topic, or our next three topics. The first, Zenith Boil, then code from Pallas, then code in the Techne of Dramatic Communication von Admir Selimovic, and Watch More Television von Olaf Gravert and Christopher Roth from Studio Brandhuber+. Oh, und erste Panel werden Vale Medina und Benjamin Reynolds vortragen mit dem Titel Zenith Boil. Vale Medina and Benjamin Reynolds are co-founder of Basel-based practices Palace, called Palace. They have been art fellows at the Van Eyck Academy in Netherlands. They won the 50th annually Shinkenichiu Central Glass Award in Tokyo. You will correct me if I spell it wrong, which is almost sure. Among other international prizes. Their work has been published and shown internationally, notably at the Van Abbe Museum in Netherlands and Center for Contemporary Culture in Barcelona, as well as in Boston Center for Arts and Basis for Aktuelle Kunst in Netherlands. So I will leave you podium for the presentation, first presentation from third panel, Zenith Boyle.